Welcome back to Pale History, where we strip away the romanticized veneer of the past to expose the gritty, often agonizing truths beneath. Tonight, we're plunging into a world where a minor ache could become a lifelong torment, and a visit to the dentist was less a procedure and more an act of desperate courage. We're talking about medieval dentistry, and believe me, it will make you profoundly grateful for every single dental appointment you've ever had. Before we descend into this often uncomfortable truth, tell me, where are you tuning in from tonight? Are you nestled in a cozy, modern home, perhaps enduring a long commute, or simply seeking a moment of quiet reflection, hidden from the general chaos of life? Drop a comment below and let me know your location and the time, and don't forget to like and subscribe. Your engagement truly helps us continue to unearth these often forgotten stories. Imagine, if you will, a dull throb beginning in your molar, a whisper of discomfort that steadily escalates into a relentless skull-splitting agony. Now imagine that agony with no prospect of relief, no soothing gel, no swift injection, no precision drill, no hushed, sterile environment, no gentle chairside manner. Just a raw, unending torment that often lasted for days, weeks, or even became a permanent fixture of your existence, dictating your mood, your diet, and your ability to work. This was the brutal, unromanticized reality for vast swathes of the medieval population, from the lowliest serf to the mightiest monarch. For them, dental pain was not an occasional nuisance. It was an expected, agonizing companion on life's short, harsh journey, a constant battle against a hidden enemy within their own mouths. In an era defined by hard labor, coarse diets, and a complete fundamental ignorance of microbial hygiene, germ theory, or effective pain management, dental health was quite frankly a biological disaster zone. Human remains from medieval graveyards consistently tell a grim story. Teeth routinely ground down to stumps, rotted away by rampant decay, riddled with festering abscesses, or simply fallen out long before old age. This left behind a landscape of infection, inflammation, and chronic, debilitating pain. The solutions available were few, crude, and often inflicted more terror and damage than the initial ailment itself. So, clench your jaw, prepare your senses, and let's unravel the tooth of the matter, medieval dentistry, and why you'd rather die. The medieval mouth, a battlefield of decay, erosion, and infection. To truly grasp the horrors of medieval dental suffering, we must first understand the perilous state of the average medieval mouth. It was a hostile environment, a microcosm of the challenges faced by the body as a whole, constantly under attack from diet, lack of hygiene, and the pervasive threat of infection. This was emphatically not a place of pearly whites, but rather a battlefield scarred by constant wear, rampant decay, and pervasive gum disease. The very bedrock of medieval sustenance, while often romanticized as natural and wholesome by modern standards, was a primary culprit in dental destruction. The vast majority of the population subsisted on a diet overwhelmingly dominated by coarsely ground grains. Think of the literal staff of medieval life. Bread. This wasn't the soft, fluffy, refined loaf we slice today. Medieval bread was typically made from robust, hardy grains like wheat, rye, or barley, milled using primitive stone querns or large water mills. A crucial and profoundly painful flaw in this ancient milling process was that these millstones frequently shed tiny fragments of abrasive grit, sand, and even microscopic bits of rock directly into the flour. Consequently, every single bite of that dense, often hard medieval bread acted like a relentless abrasive, slowly but surely grinding down the precious protective layer of tooth enamel. Over a lifetime, this constant mechanical friction led to severe dental attrition and erosion, a process that would expose the sensitive dentin and eventually the vulnerable pulp beneath, paving a direct pathway for excruciating pain and overwhelming infection. Beyond the sheer abrasiveness of the diet, other factors contributed significantly to widespread dental decay. While refined sugar, imported from distant lands, was an obscenely expensive luxury reserved for the elite until much later in the period, natural sugars were still abundant in the medieval diet. Honey, dried fruits like apples and pears, root vegetables, and naturally sweet berries all provided fermentable carbohydrates that eager oral bacteria rapidly converted into destructive acids. More significantly, the almost universal consumption of acidic and sugary drinks was a major contributing factor to oral disease. Clean, potable drinking water was a rarity in many medieval settlements, and often viewed with deep suspicion, and correctly so, as a vector for various diseases. As a result, people of all ages, including children, habitually consumed fermented beverages such as ale, cider, and wine throughout the day. These drinks, with their inherent acidity and often high natural sugar content, constantly bathed the teeth in an environment highly conducive to rapid enamel erosion and bacterial proliferation, forming sticky plaque and leading inevitably to cavities. And then there was hygiene, or rather the stark, unsettling absence of anything resembling effective oral care. The very concept of regular systemic oral hygiene as we understand it simply did not exist in the medieval mind. There were no mass-produced toothbrushes, no fluoride-enhanced commercial toothpastes, and certainly no flossing. While some fastidious individuals might have attempted rudimentary methods, perhaps wiping their teeth with a rough cloth, rubbing them with certain abrasive herbs or charcoal, or rinsing their mouths with wine, vinegar, or even diluted urine, believed by some to cleanse due to its ammonia content. These efforts were sporadic, inconsistent, and ultimately woefully ineffective against the relentless buildup of plaque, tartar, and stubbornly embedded food debris. Halitosis, or severe bad breath, was not merely common. It was an accepted, pervasive background element of daily life, a constant, unpleasant reminder of the unhygienic realities endured by everyone. The consequence of this perfect storm, abrasive diets, acidic drinks, and non-existent hygiene, was a medieval mouth riddled with a terrifying array of problems. Caries, or cavities, were rampant, relentlessly eating away at tooth structure, often progressing unchecked from small pits to large, gaping holes. These frequently progressed into excruciating abscesses, pockets of pus forming deep within the jawbone or at the root of a tooth due to overwhelming bacterial infection. These abscesses caused immense, localized swelling, a throbbing pain that radiated through the skull, and often an accompanying foul taste as pus drained into the mouth. Gum disease, or periodontal disease, was chronic and widespread, characterized by painful inflammation, receding gums, eventual bone loss around the teeth, and finally, alarming tooth mobility and spontaneous loss. Beyond decay and gum disease, issues like malocclusion, misaligned bites, and impacted wisdom teeth, which remain problematic for many today, would have caused agonizing pressure and pain with virtually no viable solution beyond suffering. Dental archaeology, studying countless human remains from medieval cemeteries, consistently corroborates this grim picture. By their mid-20s, many medieval individuals had already lost several teeth. And by middle age, a complete set of healthy, functional teeth would have been an exceptional rarity, often leaving only painful stumps, gaping holes, and a legacy of lifelong suffering and disfigurement. The practitioners, and lack thereof, who did you turn to? When the relentless agony of a decaying tooth became utterly unbearable, a medieval person faced a terrifying dilemma. The idea of a specialized dental professional, meticulously trained in the nuances of oral health and equipped with sterile tools and advanced knowledge, was centuries away from conception. There were no dental schools, no dedicated clinics, and certainly no gentle chairside manner designed to soothe a patient's fears. Instead, you were largely at the mercy of a motley collection of practitioners, each with their own crude methods, often dubious understanding of human anatomy, and ultimately limited capacity to truly alleviate suffering. The most common and accessible dental professional was the barber surgeon. These multi-talented individuals were the pragmatic, hands-on backbone of practical medicine in towns, villages, and even on battlefields. Their shops, often identifiable by the iconic red and white striped pole, a symbol derived from the blood-stained bandages and basins of bloodletting that were common sights within, served as a hub for a surprising variety of services. They were the ones who cut hair, provided shaves, performed minor surgeries like lancing boils and setting bones, administered bloodletting, a highly popular, though often ineffective or harmful, cure for many ailments, and, most relevant to our topic, performed tooth extractions. Their training was not academic. It was primarily through a hands-on apprenticeship, observing, assisting, and eventually performing procedures under the guidance of an experienced barber surgeon. Their knowledge was passed down through practical experience, often without a deep theoretical understanding of underlying physiology, pathology, or the true causes of disease. The tools of a barber surgeon's trade were primitive and, to modern eyes, terrifying instruments of torture. Imagine rough iron forceps, crude pliers, or even adapted blacksmith's tongs, often hand-forged, blunt, and designed for brute force rather than delicate extraction. The concept of sterilization was entirely unknown and utterly foreign. These same uncleaned, often rusty tools would be used on patient after patient, directly transferring bacteria, pus, and sometimes even more serious infections like erysipelas or syphilis from one agonizing mouth to the next. The barber surgeon's approach to a toothache was direct, unyielding, and brutal. Identify the offending tooth, apply the unyielding grip of the pliers, and then yank with sheer, unadulterated force. There was no local numbing anesthetic to dull the searing pain. At best, a patient might be offered a strong alcoholic drink like ale or wine to dull their senses, or in rarer, more dangerous cases, administered a highly toxic dose of a powerful sedative derived from plants like opium or hemlock, hoping it would render them semi-conscious enough to endure the agonizing procedure. There was no finesse to separate the tooth from its bone, just raw power and the desperate hope that the tooth came out whole, and that the jaw didn't shatter in the process. The patient's screams were not only common, but an expected, if unwelcome, part of the entire ordeal. In the earlier medieval periods, particularly during the early Middle Ages, some monks and clergy engaged in rudimentary medical practices as part of their monastic duties and charitable work. Within the confines of monasteries, they often tended to the sick and poor from their communities, drawing their medical knowledge from ancient texts preserved in monastic libraries and from their own cultivation of medicinal herbs. This sometimes included basic interventions like lancing boils or, on occasion, tooth extractions. However, as the church grew in power and formalized its doctrines, decrees were increasingly issued that forbade clergy from engaging in bloody procedures or those deemed too secular or undignified for a man of God. This shift, aiming to preserve the spiritual purity of the clergy, effectively pushed the burden of such invasive practices more heavily onto secular practitioners like the barber surgeons. For those less inclined or able to seek out a barber surgeon, or for less severe pain, the local wise women, folk healers, or midwives might be consulted. These venerable figures were repositories of vast, orally transmitted knowledge concerning herbalism, traditional remedies, and natural lore. They understood the local plants and their properties, passed down through generations. For a toothache, they might suggest specific herbal poultices applied to the swollen gum, mouthwashes made from antiseptic herbs like sage, rosemary, or vervain, or mild pain relievers derived from plants like opium poppy, mandrake, or henbane. While these botanical aids could offer some temporary solace or comfort, their efficacy against deeply rooted infections or structurally compromised teeth was inherently limited. Dosage was often guesswork, making the use of potent analgesics like opium a dangerous gamble with potentially fatal side effects. Their true value lay less in surgical intervention and more in their compassionate care, their deep understanding of local ailments, and their ability to provide psychological reassurance through familiar rituals and remedies. And then there were the itinerant tooth drawers, or quacks. These figures were the flamboyant showmen of medieval medicine, traveling from market to market, fair to fair, drawing large crowds with theatrical displays of their skills. They were master marketers, often identifiable by their extravagant attire and a gruesome trophy necklace made from dozens, sometimes hundreds, of extracted teeth, a macabre testament to their alleged prowess. They'd set up makeshift stalls, often on a raised platform, promising miraculous cures for all ailments, and engaging in loud public tooth-pulling spectacles. They might sell dubious potions, tinctures, and charms alongside their extractions. Their primary motivation was quick profit. Their methods were unequivocally rough, and their concern for patient well-being or hygiene was utterly non-existent. They often left patients with shattered tooth fragments, fractured jaws, or severe, life-threatening infections. Despite the profound risks, their public demonstrations and promises of instant relief, often aided by a strong draught of ale or spirits for the patient, made them popular, albeit dangerous, figures, preying on the desperate hope of those in agonizing pain. The very existence of such charlatans highlights the desperate need for relief in a time without proper medical regulation or true scientific understanding. Finally, for the truly desperate and those beyond the reach of any practitioner, there was self-treatment. With no other immediate options, individuals might resort to agonizing attempts to extract a loose tooth with their own fingers or crude tools found around the house, perhaps a hammer and chisel or a hot poker. They might try to pierce a swollen abscess with a needle or knife to relieve pressure. The sheer desperation involved in such acts speaks volumes about the agonizing, unbearable pain they were trying to escape, even at the risk of greater injury, disfigurement, or death. The lack of specialization in dentistry as a distinct medical field meant that oral health was often an afterthought, relegated to general practitioners with limited tools and even more limited knowledge. The treatments, a symphony of pain, superstition, and desperation. Let's delve into the actual visceral experience of dental treatment in the Middle Ages. Prepare to wince and perhaps even gag. The defining characteristic was excruciating, unimaginable pain, compounded by the ever-present shadow of overwhelming infection and the often bizarre overlay of deeply ingrained superstition. This was not medicine as we know it. It was a desperate gamble against the body's revolt, a test of endurance against the crude implements of relief. The most common cure, as we've established, was extraction. When a tooth was beyond saving, riddled with decay or festering with an abscess, it simply had to come out. Picture the scene. The patient, often a terrified soul, would be held down, sometimes forcibly, by assistants or strong bystanders, with jaws forcibly pried open. The barber surgeon, perhaps with grimy, unwashed hands and a blood-stained apron, would take his crude, often dull, iron pliers or adapted tongues. There was no local anesthetic to numb the searing pain. At best, a patient might be offered a strong alcoholic drink like ale or wine to dull their senses, or in rarer, more dangerous cases, administered a highly toxic dose of a powerful sedative derived from plants like opium, mandrake, or hemlock, hoping it would render them semi-conscious enough to endure the procedure. The pliers would clamp onto the offending tooth, and with a guttural grunt, the surgeon would yank, twist, and pull with sheer, unbridled force. The sounds were horrific, the sickening crack of the tooth as it struggled against its bony prison, the tearing of gums, the splintering of bone, and the inevitable blood-curdling screams of the patient. Often, the tooth would shatter, leaving painful fragments embedded deep within the jawbone, or the jaw itself could be fractured during the brutal, uncontrolled process. Bleeding was often profuse and difficult to staunch, and infection was virtually guaranteed. The open wound in the mouth was immediately exposed to the unsterile tools, the barber surgeon's hands, and the general unsanitary environment of the shop, paving the way for deeper, more widespread infections. For those seeking alternative relief, or when an extraction was deemed too risky, cauterization was sometimes employed. This involved applying a red-hot iron rod, probe, or wire directly to the affected tooth or gum. The barbaric idea was either to burn away decayed tissue or to sear the nerve, hoping to kill it and stop the pain. The searing agony of burning flesh and tissue, the horrifying smell that would fill the air, and the inevitable tissue damage meant this was a truly desperate last resort. While it might temporarily alleviate nerve pain, it offered little long-term benefit and often led to further complications like tissue necrosis or deeper infection, as the burned tissue became a new breeding ground for bacteria. Attempts at fillings were rudimentary and exceedingly rare, usually reserved for the very wealthy, or performed as part of a public spectacle by charlatans. If a cavity was noted, it might be loosely packed with beeswax, a mixture of herbs, or in some documented cases, even lead, though the toxic effects of lead were not understood. For the truly affluent, there might be incredibly rare attempts at using gold leaf, primarily for cosmetic purposes. These were temporary measures at best, offering little true protection against further decay and potentially introducing new problems or toxins into the mouth. Beyond the brutal physical interventions, the medieval mind was deeply steeped in superstition and folk magic, particularly when confronted with pain and illness that defied conventional, empirical understanding. People desperately turned to spiritual or mystical remedies when physical ones failed, seeking solace, hope, and a sense of agency where empirical knowledge offered none. Prayers to specific saints were common, most notably Saint Apollonia, the patron saint of dentistry, who suffered the horrific torture of having all her teeth pulled out before being martyred. Supplicants would pray to her, often grasping a tooth or an image of her, believing she could intercede on their behalf for relief from toothache. Relics, amulets worn around the neck, or holy water were believed to offer protection or provide miraculous cures. Specific days of the week, phases of the moon, or astrological alignments might be deemed more propitious for a cure. More bizarre rituals were also widely practiced. Rubbing the aching tooth with a dead man's tooth, a macabre attempt at transferring the pain, carrying a specific type of stone, reciting particular incantations or charms at certain times of the day, or burying the extracted tooth in a specific location under the full moon. Even the prevalent toothworm theory, the ancient belief that an actual worm burrowed into the tooth, causing the pain and decay, led to bizarre treatments. Some dentists would attempt to smoke out the worm by having the patient inhale the fumes of certain herbs or seeds, like henbane seeds, believing the worm would fall out onto a bowl of water below, often displaying a piece of the seed as the worm. While these practices offered little, if any, physiological relief, they played a crucial psychological role, providing a sense of agency, hope, and control in a world of otherwise unmanageable pain and overwhelming medical ignorance. Pain management itself, as a concept separate from cure, was a primitive and dangerous art. Beyond a stiff drink of alcohol, powerful sedatives were available from herbalists, such as opium, derived from the poppy, mandrake, or henbane. These could be brewed into tinctures, poultices, or even concocted into sleeping sponges to be inhaled or placed over the mouth and nose. However, the precise dosage was a perilous unknown, making their use incredibly dangerous and often leading to accidental overdose, poisoning, or death. Antiseptic herbs like sage, rosemary, or garlic might be used in crude mouthwashes, offering minor cleansing properties but ultimately unable to combat deep-seated infections. The overriding reality was that genuine, effective, and safe pain relief was almost non-existent. Consequences beyond the mouth, a life defined by pain and peril. The profound impact of medieval dental issues extended far beyond the immediate agony of a toothache. It profoundly affected a person's overall health, quality of life, economic standing, and even social interactions, often leading to a cascade of debilitating complications and, far too frequently, to an early, miserable death. Systemic infection and death, perhaps the gravest and most common consequence, was the constant, pervasive threat of systemic infection. A simple dental abscess, if left untreated or exacerbated by crude, unsterile extraction, was a direct pathway for virulent bacteria to enter the bloodstream. This could rapidly lead to sepsis, a life-threatening full-body infection causing high fevers, chills, organ failure, delirium, and often a painful death. Infections from the oral cavity could spread relentlessly to surrounding tissues, to the jawbone, causing agonizing osteomyelitis, a severe bone infection, to the face, resulting in disfiguring cellulitis, a rapidly spreading skin infection, to the throat, potentially leading to Ludwig's angina, a severe, rapidly progressing infection of the floor of the mouth that could obstruct the airway, effectively suffocating the patient, or even directly to the brain, causing meningitis or brain abscesses, which were almost universally fatal. The utter lack of antibiotics meant that the body's natural immune system was the sole, often insufficient defense against these bacterial onslaughts. A simple toothache could, and often did, become a horrifying death sentence. Malnutrition and weakness, severe chronic tooth pain, inflamed gums, or numerous missing teeth made the fundamental act of eating incredibly painful and difficult. The coarse, often tough medieval diet required robust chewing. The inability to properly masticate food led to chronic malnutrition, significant weight loss, and general physical weakness, rendering individuals more susceptible to other diseases and drastically reducing their capacity for manual labor. A critical factor in a subsistence economy where physical strength directly correlated with survival. Imagine trying to work in the fields, operate a loom, or participate in heavy communal labor with a jaw swollen to twice its size, throbbing with unbearable pain, unable to properly nourish your body. Speech impairment and disfigurement. The widespread loss of teeth, particularly the front incisors and canines, significantly affected speech, leading to pronounced lisps, whistling sounds, or difficulty forming certain consonants. Chronic abscesses and infections caused noticeable and often grotesque swelling and disfigurement of the face and jaw. These physical deformities, combined with missing or decaying teeth, would have been a common sight in any medieval community. While medieval beauty standards differed from our own, severe facial disfigurement undoubtedly had a social impact, potentially leading to social ostracization, reducing marital prospects, and diminishing one's standing and self-confidence within the community. For many, this was a permanent, visible mark of their suffering. Chronic pain and mental health. For a vast proportion of the medieval population, dental pain was not an episodic annoyance, but a constant, grinding agony that gnawed away at the very fabric of daily life. Imagine living day in and day out with a throbbing tooth, a swollen face, the constant metallic taste of infection, and the unrelenting fear of spreading disease. This relentless physical suffering would have taken an immense toll on mental health, leading to chronic fatigue, severe irritability, debilitating depression, and a significantly reduced quality of life. Sleep would have been difficult to achieve, if not impossible, further exacerbating the suffering and weakening the body's ability to heal. The pervasive nature of this pain likely contributed to a certain stoicism among the populace, but also to deep-seated misery and resignation. The constant, gnawing presence of pain likely permeated their worldview, fostering a heightened awareness of mortality and the fragility of the human body. Economic and social burden. An individual crippled by chronic dental pain would be less able to work effectively in the fields, manage a household, craft goods, or participate in the physically demanding aspects of medieval life. This reduced productivity made them a burden on their family or community, further impacting their social standing and economic well-being. A peasant unable to work due to a raging tooth infection was a mouth to feed with no hands to sew. For an artisan, an aching tooth could mean inability to concentrate on delicate work, leading to lost income. Our understanding of these grim realities is not just conjecture or speculation. Archaeological evidence, particularly the meticulous examination of skeletal remains from medieval cemeteries and mass graves, consistently corroborates these historical accounts. Skulls frequently show clear and undeniable signs of severe dental attrition, widespread caries, extensive large abscesses that have eroded significant portions of the jawbone, and extensive ante-mortem tooth loss, meaning teeth lost during life, not post-mortem. This physical evidence, preserved in the bones of our ancestors, paints a chillingly consistent and undeniable picture of widespread, agonizing dental disease that defined life for millions. Conclusion: a grateful glance at modernity. The medieval mouth was a testament to the sheer, unyielding endurance of humanity in the face of unimaginable pain and overwhelming odds. It was a world where oral hygiene was non-existent, where dental problems were endemic and accepted as an unavoidable, brutal part of life, and where the very cure often felt like another form of torture. A simple toothache, for us a minor inconvenience, easily fixed with a quick trip to a highly trained professional, could be a lingering curse, a path to disfigurement, or even a direct route to an early agonizing death for a medieval person. So the next time you recline in that comfortable dentist's chair, hear the familiar, reassuring hum of the drill, or feel the comforting numbness of a local anesthetic, pause for a moment. Appreciate the profound advancements in science, hygiene, and compassionate care that shield us from the daily agonies that were simply life for our medieval ancestors. Their silent, immense suffering, so often forgotten in our sanitized versions of the past, serves as a stark, powerful reminder of how far we've truly come. It's a reminder that even the smallest comforts we take for granted, a pain-free bite, a clear voice, a confident smile, were once distant, impossible dreams for the vast majority of humanity. Thank you for joining us on this unflinching journey through the raw realities of history. If you've gained a new, perhaps slightly pained appreciation for your toothbrush and your next dental checkup, please consider liking this video, sharing it with someone else who appreciates the grim truths of the past, and subscribing to Pale History for more such explorations. What other everyday discomforts of medieval life, often hidden beneath layers of myth, would you like us to unearth? Let us know in the comments below. Until next time, may your teeth stay healthy and your history be clear.